What's going on, everybody? Here again, Johnny and Gene show unveiled. Oh, wait, what is it? Wait, you get made fun of. This is funny. Unveiled,
Unveiled.
unveiled. We talk. Listen, we're street guys. We try. um, so today we have a special episode about an old time gangster. He was from the West Side, very well respected guy in the area, and we're gonna talk a little bit about him. Yeah, Johnny, take it over.
Fritzy Giovanelli. He was a captain in Genovese family, known as a powerful bookmaker. Very nice guy, actually. Had a son that was educated, became a chiropractor. He owned one of the local clubs off of Union Turnpike called the Swim Club that we grew up in. He started off like most gangsters, no money, small hood, time things, robbing things, bookmaking, loan sharking, small-time criminal, not very powerful. And he grew into a position and became a very well-liked guy. Started running one of the hugest bookmaking business out of, he's from the area of Ridgewood. And he ran a business with guys like Vito Perone, nice guy, was a friend of my father's. They would go down Atlantic City together. Vito's son-in-law was Anthony Stabile. And his son, Frankie Perone, stayed with us, a younger guy, nice guy, regular guy, not a street guy. He also had a guy named Alex that worked for him later on, became a member of the West Side Genovese family, also a nice
Alex
guy.
Alex is a big bookmaker.
Yeah.
And Frankie Barossa.
And then you had Charlie that used to run, a black guy, used to run the bookmaking business for them out of the Bow Wow, local hangout for everybody, eating, games, machines, and he would take action from there. So Fritzy started developing a bookmaking business in our neighborhood, outside our neighborhood, locally around the area. And he was known to be a very nice guy. Guys liked him. Everybody was a well-liked guy, a gentleman, and became very powerful with the West Side. To get to later on in the story, 1986, and this is a pretty famous case through the history of organized crime. There was a guy, I believe at the time, Vendette, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name.
I think I heard this murder before. I think there was a guy, Steve or Carmine, involved with them, right?
Yeah, Steve Maltese, I believe his name.
Vinny and Sarah was friends with
and Carmine Carter, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were with Fritzy. They were at the diner on Nicholas Avenue in Myrtle Avenue, Nicholas, excuse me. Castillo's, I believe it was called. Castillo's Diner, if I'm correct. But I think that's what it was called. And they were being followed by Vendette and a woman, Burke. They were with the organized crime task force. They went into the diner and they were followed in by Vendette. I believe Burke stayed in the car. On the way out, they seen Vendette, and as they come out, they grabbed him and put him against the wall, not knowing who he was. They thought he was somebody trying to hit them. And, this was not just the story in public, but this was the story within the mob world. I don't know if people thought they used this as a defense, but they really didn't know who he was. And they thought he was trying to either kill them or rob them. They weren't sure. So they threw him against the wall. And, Fritzy wasn't known to be, he was a nice guy. He wasn't known to be one of, a thuggish kind of guy. So I tended to believe through when this happened that he wasn't lying. And Vito also was very close with my father, so I was getting an insight from what Vito got from Fritzy. And I knew Fritzy. I didn't still have long conversations with him, but I knew him. And when they threw him against the wall, Burke jumps out of her car and pulls a gun. And these guys had guns. Gualtieri had a gun, and Steve and Maltese had a gun. And they went back and forth. She claimed she identified herself as a police officer. They claim she didn't. And shooting ensued. And Vendette got shot several times in the head, I believe in the back. She got shot in the chest.
Wow.
So he was killed. These guys took off. And after that, she survives the shooting.
Right.
Obviously, he dies. And they went to trial. And during the trial testimony, things came out of what happened. Now, prior to that, I used to hang around the swim club. And Angelo Ruggiero, we've been doing a lot of shows on Quack Quack, and we would go. That was one of our hangouts. It was a good spot. A lot of the girls that we knew had stayed with us worked at the bar, and so we were at the bar one day. I ended up showing up, and Angelo's son, Johnny Boy, was getting beat up by the bouncers. At that time, I didn't know that Fritzy owned that place.
Right.
And as I pulled up, they told me he was getting beat up, and I got out of my car and I shot the bouncer.
I know about that.
So, after I shot the bouncer, I found out that Fritzy owned the club, and he told a guy to get in touch with me that was around him that I knew, and I went to see him. And he left. He said to me, thanks, Johnny. He was really nice. That's why I got to say he was a nice guy, and he said, thanks. You shot the bouncer, you killed my business. I would have took him in the back for you, could have shot him back there. So he said, give my apologies to Angelo.
Yeah.
And after the bouncer, actually recovers, he says, I'm going to give him a beating again. So that was the conversation I had with Fritzy at that time. And so when this case happened, I really paid it, obviously because I had connections. Vito worked there. My father was friends with Vito. I was always with Vito. His son stayed with us.
Right.
So there was a lot of connections. And, the Stabiles, I grew up with Jerome, and I grew up with his brother also, who ends up getting killed.
Yeah.
So there was a connection with them, and I was very interested in the case. When Burke testifies, she takes the stand. She supposedly does a lousy job on the stand. And they come back with a hung jury on it. And the wife of Vendette actually was very verbal, and so was Vendette's parents, blaming their son and husband from dying on the police officer Burke.
Wow. That
she wasn't good at her job. She got him killed. And they, I guess whatever information they had from the law enforcement side, they blamed that death on her.
Wow.
And there was a second trial. And during the second trial, it was another hung jury, and they beat that. And they were never convicted. And in my opinion, I feel bad that Vendette, died, that somebody died. But I don't believe they killed him knowing and this is from me talking to people, me being involved with them, me having conversations with people that were around him, and my own personal interaction with them. He wasn't that type of guy. He was a money maker. He wasn't vicious. I think they really believed they were going to get killed. And I believe that they thought they were going to get robbed. They weren't sure which one. And their action was more defensive than to be proactive of trying to kill a cop.
Right.
And I don't know too many guys that would want to kill a cop.
Right.
So, I think it was just the way it was handled, I'm not going to blame it on her because I wasn't there, whether it was the way it was handled by her or by the way they presented themselves, or I don't know what was exchanged verbally between both, but the case never went any further than that. Later on in life, Fritzy gets caught up in another case and goes to jail for a while.
Right.
And later on, he dies about 84 years old.
He just died recently. His nephew's actually friends with us. I'm not going to say his name, but I knew his nephew very well.
But it was one of the most, famous cases in our area from Ridgewood to Jamaica. Right. Everybody spoke about it.
Of course.
And, this is 1986. This is the height of the mafia.
Yeah.
And it was in the height of a lot of violence, but nothing to the magnitude where you go and you kill a cop. The only one prior around that time that gets killed was Eddie Burns. And that was in South Jamaica, sitting in a car, and they thought he was another cop.
And then
he was executed by Scott.
And Dino and them killed the cop.
What's his name? Scott Cobb, or football player, and he was involved with the Supreme Team and those guys.
They killed a probation officer.
Yeah, he was in a.
I think they killed the probation. Was it the cop?
Cop
in front of the house because he kept sitting in front of the house.
He wasn't the cop that was sitting in front of the house.
Oh,
there was another cop. He ended up taking off. He was harassing them.
It was a probation officer, I thought.
Whoever was bothering him, it wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't Eddie Burns.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie Burns' brother became an FBI agent.
Right.
So these were some of the more famous cases where law enforcement were killed. In an era where there was a lot of killing going on.
Oh, God.
Shooting. But
I was just watching something on Netflix about New York, and they said there was 2,500 murders a year in the 80s.
Yeah, it was
That's
crazy.
crazy.
That's what I'm saying when I talk
Crazy. Yeah.
shootings, and people really don't understand the magnitude of the shooting, the killings, and the guys that there was organized crime, and we were joking about it today, me and another guy, and it was disorganized crime, meaning there was guys like our friends that didn't care about organized crime.
No, they did what the fuck they wanted.
They did what the fuck they wanted.
Hell yeah, outlaws. They were crazy.
But for people that want to look into that case, read up on Fritzy, because it's an interesting case, and he was an interesting guy, and he was well known in the mob world as a big money maker, bookmaker, and his whole crew of guys that I named were all nice guys, gentlemen. They weren't guys that they were just about money, and they were just successful guys. They were business guys, legally illegal, but they didn't have a reputation of being vicious that way.
Right.
If you look them up, you read about them, and you'll see and give your opinion.
Yeah.
Follow right. Give us some comments on what you think.
Yes. If you want, you can also follow us on Instagram, Gene Borello, Johnny Alite. We answer all questions. If you DM us, message us. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.